Hello everyone, I'm Alex Dykes, and today we're out here taking a look at the Nissan Altima. Now this mid-size sedan segment is extraordinarily competitive, so I'll really only be comparing this sedan to its closest four competitors, and that would be the Accord, the Camry, the Fusion, as well as the Hyundai Sonata. Now this particular Altima is a 2014 Nissan Altima, but I will be talking about the 2015 Altima because it is exactly the same with only a few changes. We have charcoal carpets instead of the beige carpets in the beige equipped interior model, and we also have some reordering of the option packages and pricing, which we'll be talking about in this video. As always, let me know what you think about the styling of the Altima down there in the comments section down below. I find it very attractive. I don't think it's quite as attractive as the Fusion or the Mazda 6. I think the new Sonata, the new 2015 Sonata, actually has a slight edge on the Altima as well. But overall, I do find it a very elegant look, which is something that does appeal to me. The styling on the Altima is instantly recognizable as a Nissan product. We have this corporate grille right up front, we have these large headlamps right over here, and our particular model does have the fog lamps. In our 2.5-liter SL tester that we're looking at right here, we have halogen headlamps, but you can get HID headlamps in the 3.5-liter SL model. The Altima's style is conservative, but it is a little bit more adventurous than you'd find in the Passat or in the Accord. We have these headlamps that wrap around a little bit around the front quarter panel, and we have this character line that rises and falls a little bit along the side of the Altima, all the way to the back here, where we have a very similar theme going on for this rear tail lamp that has sort of this three-pointed star going on. In terms of the side profile, we have a slightly higher belt line than you'd find in the Accord, but we do have a relatively high greenhouse, very much like the Accord, which is excellent for rear passenger headroom. In comparison, something like a Ford Fusion would have a very drastically sloping rear profile that really cuts down on headroom. It does look sexy, but it means that you have a lot less headroom in the back in something like a Fusion. From this angle, you can see what I mean about the three-pointed star theme going on in these rear tail lamps. So you have one point here, one point down there, and one point right up there. Now our particular model, even though we have the 4-cylinder engine, has dual chrome exhaust tips, which is a nice touch. We also have this large chrome band right across the trunk lid. Overall, I think it's a relatively attractive rear end. In terms of overall style, I give the Altima 8 out of 10 points because I do think that the new Sonata, the Ford Fusion, as well as the Mazda 6 are slightly better looking on the outside. They are a little bit more adventurous, however, so if you're after something that's a little bit more elegant, a little bit more restrained, then something like this Altima or the Honda Accord would probably suit you better. Nissan continues to offer a very traditional 4 or 6-cylinder engine lineup. Things start out with a 2.5-liter 4-cylinder engine, which is what we're taking a look at right here. It produces 182 horsepower and 180 pound-feet of torque. You can also get a 3.5-liter Nissan V6 engine, produces 270 horsepower and 258 pound-feet of torque. Both engines are mated to a relatively new, continuously variable transmission that was introduced for the 2013 model year. The big improvement for this CVT over previous generations of CVT is that this one has a much broader gear range, has a much lower starting gear and a much taller final gear to improve fuel economy and help low-end acceleration. Thanks to that CVT, we get 27 miles per gallon city, 38 highway in this 4-cylinder model with a combined rating of 31 miles per gallon overall. This is easily one of the most fuel-efficient non-hybrid mid-size sedans that you can get in America. The 3.5-liter V6 engine does incredibly well for itself as well. It comes in at 22 miles per gallon city, 32 highway, and 26 combined. That's a slight improvement over last year's numbers, even though nothing really changed. While other manufacturers are out there restating their fuel economy numbers downward, thanks to the CVT, Nissan has actually improved their fuel economy numbers upward with basically no changes for the 2015 model year. Front seat comfort comes in at 9 out of 10 points for the base and S models, 10 out of 10 points for the SV and SL models, because the SV and SL models get this two-way power adjustable lumbar support. We have a decent amount of cushioning on this seat, a decent amount of lateral support on these bolsters on the side and on the bottom cushions as well. We also have a tilt telescopic steering column with a decent range of motion. Now these seats are easily the most comfortable seats in this mid-size sedan category for my body shape. I do have to underscore that because everybody is shaped a little bit differently and you should spend a decent amount of time in your car before you buy it. So just go to that dealer, camp out in that seat for 30 minutes to an hour, however long you can get them to let you stay in that seat, and decide whether it's comfortable for you, because what's comfortable for me may not be comfortable for you. One of the reasons these seats are so comfortable is that unlike other entries in the mid-size sedan segment, we do have an 8-way power seat. So the front of the seat bottom cushion goes up and down, and it's independent of the seat bottom cushion and the whole seat rising up and down. So that makes it an awful lot more comfortable. Now we don't have a 4-way adjustable lumbar support like you do find in some of the competition, most notably that new Chrysler 200. The passenger seat proved very comfortable as well, despite being a manually adjustable design. In upper level trims of the Altima, you can get a power passenger seat, but it will never have the same range of motion as the driver's seat. When it comes to the rear seats, I give the Altima 8 out of 10 points. These seat bottom cushions are a little bit higher off the ground than you'd find in your average midsize sedan, making these rear seats more comfortable for adults or older children. My thighs really get a little bit of support out of these seats, which is something that you don't find in something like a Ford Fusion. Now, when it comes to headroom, I do have a decent amount back here. We are in the sunroof equipped model, and that does cut down on the rear headroom. My hair is brushing the ceiling, but this is better than you'd find in those swoopier mid-size sedans like the Ford Fusion again. Now, the seat back cushion is relatively upright, which I do prefer. If I move over here to the right side, I have about 1.5 inches of legroom left behind this front seat that's all the way back in its tracks. The Altima scores about middle of the pack in terms of numbers for rear seat legroom, but in terms of overall real-world legroom, the Altima actually scores better than most of its direct competitors. And the reason is because we have a lot of front legroom, and we have a lot of rear legroom, and we have a lot of adjustability, allowing you to move this front seat really far back in its tracks or quite far forward in its tracks. And there is a decent amount of variation between the way that manufacturers measure their rear seat legroom numbers. So when you actually take a look at them in the real world, I do find the Altima just about as comfortable as those slightly larger options on paper, most notably the Camry and the Accord. If I move over to the middle seat, you can tell that the Altima has a decidedly bucket shape to its rear seats. That means the outboard seat bottom cushions are a little bit lower and a little bit further back than this mid-seat cushion. I do have a little bit of headroom left here. I can probably stick just about my hand between my head and the ceiling, but my hair is definitely brushing the ceiling. Rear seat passengers get a relatively large armrest with 2 large cup holders here, and the rear seats of course do fold down in a 60-40 split folding fashion, but you have to do that from the trunk. Unlike some of the other mid-size sedans, these rear seats do not fold completely flat with the trunk, and that's not necessarily because of the rear seat design, it's actually because of the trunk floor. The trunk floor in the Altima is quite low, which allows you to put really tall bags back there. Let's go take a look at that. Like the Altima's legroom numbers, the real-world cargo situation in the Altima is a little bit different than the numbers would indicate. Right here I have the largest roller bag you can carry on a domestic flight. If I could zip this up. It's a 24-inch roller bag, and I also have this very large folding camping chair right there, so we'll take that out. And we'll show you the party trick that goes on in the Altima. This is kind of a Nissan thing, because you can also do this in the Nissan Sentra. You can actually leave this bag in this upright position, and you can close the trunk lid. And that's not something you can do in any other mid-size sedan. And that really makes it an awful lot handier when it comes to cargo hauling, as well as packing for weekend trips away. Because all the other vehicles out there in this mid-size sedan category, you have to lay your bag down like this, because the cargo area is just not tall enough to close the lid with that bag in the vertical position. And over here I have a 26-inch roller bag. Obviously we can't close the trunk lid on that one, and you can only put about 3 roller bags in this position in the Altima's trunk, because these hinges do impact your cargo carrying capacity. So if you do want to put larger items in there, you need to make sure these hinges are not in the way. This Altima tester has this optional cargo mat. I would advise getting that. It is a dealer installed accessory, because this sort of mousy fur material that they use on the trunk liner in the Altima does tend to get grass burrs and other things in there fairly easily. If we lift this up, we do have a styrofoam holder here, which has our jack as well as our tire iron in it. And if we pull that out of the way, you can see we have a donut spare tire right there. Now you can get a dealer accessory right here, which is a cargo load divider tray right in this area. That's also something that I would recommend. It really makes the trunk in your Altima an awful lot handier. Overall, I give this 9 out of 10 points when it comes to my exclusive trunk comfort index. We miss a perfect 10 out of 10 because I don't have an assist handle right here on the trunk lid to help you close the trunk on the inside or the outside. That leaves you to get your hands dirty on the outside of the paint, scratch the paint, or pull off the interior trim like this when you're trying to close the trunk lid. Let's take a quick spin around the Altima's interior. We do have height adjustable seatbelts for the driver and the front passenger. And we have these large and comfortable adjustable two-way headrests for the driver and the passenger as well. They don't hit me in a funny spot on the neck, which I really appreciate. Overall, these seats in the Altima, as I said earlier, are incredibly comfortable. Our SL model has these perforated leather beige seats, as you can see right here. Like most mid-size sedans, the front doors are a mixture of hard touch plastics right over here and right down here, and soft touch plastics, and that would be this black upper portion, as well as this large armrest section. Now, one thing I really like on the Altima that you won't find in something like a Camry or even actually the Accord is that this door armrest is incredibly thickly padded. I tend to like to rest my arm on the door armrest. I know that a lot of people tell you that you shouldn't do that, especially chiropractors, but everybody does, and this really makes the Altima an awful lot more comfortable than some of those other options out there. Over on the dashboard, we find, again, a mixture of hard and soft touch plastics. Hard touch plastics up here, soft touch plastics the rest of the dashboard, and then hard touch plastics below this fake wood trim. This is fairly believable fake wood trim. Pretty much everybody in the mid-size sedan segment has some sort of faux wood except for Honda, which goes for something that's kind of sort of wood but not quite wood. Below the wood trim panel, we do have a very large glove box, which is something that you'll find in a lot of mid-size sedans. Here we have the instruction manual. There's a slot for that to go right up there. I was easily able to put mid-size tablet computers right in there without too much of a problem. It also has a lock right there. Moving over to the center console, our model has the Bose sound system, so we do have a center channel speaker right above these two large air vents. Our model also has the navigation system, which is now standard on SV and SL models of the 3.5 liter equipped model. It is still optional on all trims of the 2.5 liter model, which is what we're in right here. If you want to know more about the system, then go ahead and click that banner at the bottom of your screen and be taken on over to our review of this particular navigation system inside the Nissan Rogue. If you don't get this navigation system optionally in your Altima, then most models on the dealer lot will have a 5-inch audio system. That's just a 5-inch LCD audio-only system with no navigation feature. Now, you won't find that in the base model of the Altima, but I don't really expect you to be able to find many of those on dealer lots. It's really only a few $100s less expensive than the S model, and the S model does get that 5-inch LCD audio system. Now, that LCD audio system doesn't have voice commands for voice commanding your USB or your iDevice media library like you will find in this system. Below the navigation system, our model has dual zone climate control, and right here under this little cubby, you'll find the auxiliary inputs for that audio system. We also have a 12-volt power outlet right there, USB input as well as auxiliary input, and this cubby is a little bit deeper than it looks, and I was actually able to insert my iPhone 5 right in there and put the cable in and then close that lid, which is nice to keep it out of sight. Behind that, we have a traditional shifter, even though we do have a CVT in our model. Overdrive off button right here, sport mode right down there. Two large cup holders up front. These were easily able to accommodate the largest size takeout drinks I was able to throw at it. If we move down even further, we have another little storage cubby right here, and our model has the optional heated seats, high and low, for both the driver and the front passenger. Moving back, we have this large center armrest. It's just about as squishy as those door panels. It does open in a two-tier fashion, so right here we have this tray midsection, so that we can put wallets, phones, that sort of thing right in there, and then we have a slightly deeper well for other items right there in the center console. Moving over to the driver's side, we have this attractive 4-dial instrument cluster. If this looks familiar, then you will see basically the same instrument cluster in the Pathfinder as well as the Infiniti QX60. It's very attractive. We have this relatively small multi-information LCD display right there in the middle. Relatively small because the Chrysler 200 as well as the Ford Fusion do have a whole lot of LCD love going on right there in their instrument cluster. It is configurable and you can switch between a variety of different screens. Our particular model is configured for this fuel economy display screen, navigation directions, warning systems, fuel economy, warnings, system settings, and then our vehicle right there. And this vehicle display would display whether the lane departure systems and other warning systems are active and what they're doing on the car. You can select what you want in that display from a variety of different options. If we move on out to the steering wheel, it is important to know that we are in the 2.5 liter model, not the 3.5 liter model. If we were in the 3.5, we'd have magnesium shift pedals coming out of the steering column right there. They're large, they're gorgeous, and they're probably some of the best shift paddles you can get at any price. These are actually basically the same shift paddles that you'll find in a decent number of Infiniti models, except that we don't get the leather trim on them in the Altima. Personally, I don't quite understand why there are shift paddles on a car with a CVT. I think they're about as useful in a car with a CVT as shift paddles on a French Poodle, but they are absolutely gorgeous shift paddles. Talk more about the shift paddles later in the video. Right over here we have our cruise control buttons, phone pickup button, phone hang up button. Over here we have our volume up and down buttons. These buttons control the radio as well as that multi-information display right there in between the gauges. This is how you cycle through those different screens, as you can see right over there. We can go back with that, up and down and enter, change our source right there. And over here we have this very attractive airbag cover. This actually kind of reminds me of a cartoon elephant for some reason. Go ahead and let me know what you think in the comment section down below. I think it's decidedly attractive. It is definitely adventurous and more stylized than you find in a decent number of the competition. Everybody else goes for something a little boring, and I really quite like this design. Does remind me a little bit of an elephant, however. You can see the head up here and sort of the trunk right down there. The only real way to differentiate the interior of the 2014 and 2015 model year cars is right down here in the footwell, and that's because 2015 brings charcoal carpets to even the beige interior on the Altima. I don't think it looks quite as nice and quite as expansive as this beige carpet, but it will show dirt an awful lot less. Now, the first thing to note about the Nissan Altima out on the road is that this is one of the lightest mid-size sedans sold in America, and that really defines just about everything when it comes to the Altima out on the road. It really affects the handling, it affects the performance, it affects the braking, etc. Even though the Altima has been traditionally a relatively softly sprung mid-size sedan, It ends up performing relatively well, handling relatively well, and braking relatively well because it's so light. Thanks to the lightweight construction and the new CVT, I ran from 0 to 60 in 7.1 seconds in this 4-cylinder model and a blistering 5.5 seconds in the V6 model. That V6 model is incredibly quick thanks to that CVT. Even though we don't have the same torque figures in that V6 engine that you do in the 2-liter turbocharged engines from the competition, the lightweight and the CVT really help out the acceleration. While I admit I like the feeling of a transmission with gears, you have to ask yourself, do you want the feeling of a transmission with gears, or do you want to actually be faster from 0 to 60? And if your answer is that you want to be faster from 0 to 60, then a CVT really is the transmission for you. While I'm talking about CVTs, I have to say that the Honda Accord's CVT transmission is my favorite. It edges out this transmission because it's faster when it transitions from a low ratio to a high ratio, or from a high ratio to a low ratio, so it makes passing maneuvers feel a little bit more crisp and a little bit faster than this Nissan CVT. When it comes to handling, I give this car 7 out of 10 points in the 4-cylinder version, 8 out of 10 points with the V6. That's primarily because the V6 gets a tweaked suspension with a slightly stiffer roll bar. Almost in spite of the good handling numbers, I also give the Altima a 9 out of 10 when it comes to the ride. I think this gives you a softer and more compliant ride than the Fusion, definitely the Mazda 6, or even that Honda Accord. And the reason I say in spite of that is because in general, handling and ride are trade-offs, one to the other. So the better the handling you give a car, usually the stiffer the springs, which also results in a poorer ride. But the reason that you can have the good handling numbers and the good ride numbers in the Altima are thanks to the low curb weight. The low curb weight allows this vehicle to have wider tires, which also give you that better handling number. Even though we do still have a decent amount of body roll, we still retain good handling numbers in the Altima. That's very unlike the competition. Again, the way that we can get those wider tires in the car and not have poor fuel economy numbers is because of the low curb weight. The Altima also scores very well when it comes to cabin noise. I scored 68.5 decibels in this 4-cylinder model, approximately the same number in the V6 model, and that's relatively quiet for this mid-size sedan segment. When it comes to fuel economy, both versions of the Altima get 10 out of 10 points. I've been averaging just under 34 miles per gallon in this Altima 4-cylinder model, and just over 27 miles per gallon in the Altima V6. That Altima V6 was the 2013 model. It hasn't really changed substantively for the 2014 or the 2015 model year, although the 2015 model year car now gets 1 extra mile per gallon in city and the combined cycle. And that's really just because the car actually does give you that very good mileage, and so Nissan has revised their numbers up, while all the other manufacturers practically have been revising their numbers down. When you take a look at the competition, this 4-cylinder Altima easily bested every non-hybrid model out there, including those new fuel-efficient 4-cylinder turbo models from the competition. In fact, when you adjust for the extra cost of diesel and the urea, this is even more fuel-efficient and more economical to operate than that turbo diesel Passat. If you're wondering about my slightly lower Altima 2.5 fuel economy number in the Passat video that you saw recently, the reason for that lower number is because that number came from a pre-production Altima at the launch event. So I had only a limited amount of time in the 4-cylinder Altima at that launch event. I didn't have it on my daily drives. And here on my daily commute over 650 miles, I have been averaging 33.9 miles per gallon, which is absolutely excellent. Even better than that combined fuel economy number, however, are the highway numbers in this Altima. I was easily able to beat the EPA 38 mile per gallon number. I was averaging between 40 and 41 miles per gallon on a level highway trip with the cruise control set to 70 miles an hour and the air conditioning on. That allows you to go more than 530 miles on a tank of gas in this 2.5 liter model. Even as good as those numbers are in the 2.5 liter model, the real winner here is the 3.5 liter V6 model because it got over 27 miles per gallon in over 650 miles of mixed driving on my same daily commute that I'm getting 34 miles per gallon in this car. That's really a stellar number. When you take a look at the rest of the V6 competition, it absolutely blows them away. And even though Ford claims such numbers out of the 2-liter EcoBoost model, it really wasn't able to deliver that in my average driving situation. In terms of the competition, this 2.5 liter model doesn't feel quite as dynamic or quite as engaging as the Ford Fusion, the Mazda 6, or the Honda Accord. I do rank it above the Toyota Camry, however. A lot of that has to do with the suspension and the steering. It just doesn't feel quite as engaging or quite as communicative as those other options out there, even though the handling numbers are very good. When it comes to the V6, however, it's an entirely different animal. There is no V6 Mazda 6, so we just have to cross that one off the list. The V6 version of the Toyota Camry is still an awful lot softer. It's not as engaging, not as dynamic. This actually holds its own when you compare it to the Ford Fusion and the Honda Accord. I think I rank this slightly between the Accord and the Ford Fusion. The Ford Fusion is still a little bit more dynamic than this, but I actually rank this above the Honda Accord in terms of general dynamics with the V6 engine. Outside the handling numbers, however, the Altima really scores against the competition. Even though this doesn't have quite the same feel as the Ford Fusion, we do have excellent acceleration numbers, we have excellent fuel economy numbers, we still have 9 out of 10 points when it comes to ride, and we have a solid 7 out of 10 points when it comes to braking. So overall, this really does average out a little bit better than the Ford Fusion, topping this pack, unless you're really talking about specifically handling or specifically feel, where it is just a notch behind. I realize that some people are going to cross the Altima V6 off their shopping list simply because this vehicle has a CVT, and they're really after those dedicated shift points in a traditional automatic transmission. But the CVT, I think, is an asset to the Altima, not a detriment. The CVT is really why we have these excellent and smooth acceleration numbers, as well as the absolutely class-leading fuel economy numbers in this car, and that includes the V6 engine. The CVT also helps us hill climb because the transmission always has the perfect ratio for every situation. You don't have that speed up, slow down, upshift, downshift thing going on that you get hill climbing in a regular automatic transmission. So for me, the CVT really is the way to go. I do have to admit, however, that I still don't get the shift paddles on the steering column in the CVT-equipped V6 because I just don't find them very useful. The shifts are a little bit slow, they're a little bit mushy if I'm honest, and I think it actually detracts from the driving experience, other than the fact that those shift paddles are absolutely gorgeous and they are beautiful. They're probably some of the best shift paddles that you can get, bar none. I just don't find them very useful on a CVT. That right there is why people don't seem to like CVTs, because when you floor the car, the engine just revs all the way up to about 6,000 RPM and just hangs out there as you're accelerating. However, that's exactly why I like a CVT, because this engine is revving all the way up to its maximum power band and hanging out there, giving me the best acceleration in the car, whereas a regular automatic transmission would have to shift in and out of its maximum and optimum power band because it can't vary the gear ratios like that. Most of the pricing changes for the 2015 model year actually affect the 3.5-liter V6 model of the Altima, and it primarily has to do with the way the option packages have been rearranged for this model year. The base Altima, that would be the 2.5-liter base model, starts at $22,300. But I think that the realistic base price for the Altima is the S model at $22,560 because you get niceties like this smart key right here, so that we just have to press this button to enter the car and press a button to start the car. You also get cruise control in that S trim, which you don't get in the base model. For just under $25,000, you can get the SV model, which adds the 17-inch alloy wheels, a 5-inch LCD audio system, and a power driver's seat. That SV model also gets you the 2-position lumbar support, which I really like in the SV and the SL model. Speaking of the SL model, which we're taking a look at right here, that starts at $28,150. That gets you the LED tail lamps, the Bose audio system, power passenger seat, and leather seats. If you want the navigation system and this moonroof that our model have right here, then that ends up at $30,850. Now, while certain models of the Altima have had a slight reduction for the 2015 model year, the 3.5-liter SV and SL models get a little bit more expensive for this year, and that's because they now come standard with navigation, blind spot monitoring, and lane departure warning systems. If you do want that speedy 3.5-liter V6, which is personally my preference for the Altima, it will set you back at least $26,450 for the base 3.5-liter V6 model, and if you want the fully loaded V6, it comes in just under $32,000. When it comes to value, I give the Altima 8 out of 10 points. Nissan has traditionally been a company that really stresses value in all of their products, but this mid-size sedan category is incredibly competitive, and this is more expensive than you'll find the Kia Optima or the Hyundai Sonata out on dealer lots. Now, Nissan does tend to be fairly aggressive in terms of rebates and other incentives, so this does end up a little bit cheaper than the Accord or the Camry. Now, there's a reason I haven't said much about the Hyundai Sonata, even though the Sonata does compete very directly with this Altima, and the sales are relatively close as well. That's because that car has received a significant refresh for the 2015 model year. It will still be less expensive than the Altima. It won't deliver quite the fuel economy, and I don't expect quite the performance out of it either. However, that Sonata does have an entirely new interior, which I really like the looks of. I do expect to have that car for a complete review sometime this summer, so be sure and click that subscribe banner at the bottom of your screen so you can know more. However, at this time, it's not available on dealer lots at the time I'm shooting this video, so I didn't include too much about that 2015 Sonata in terms of my comments. If you've been paying attention, I kind of have a split overall score when it comes to the 2.5-liter or the 3.5-liter model. I do find the 2.5-liter model very compelling if you're after certain things in your mid-size sedan. Definitely if you're after a quiet, luxurious ride and you want excellent fuel economy, then the 2.5-liter model is definitely a car for you, although it does lag behind the competition in certain notable ways. If you want a car full of the latest gadgets, the latest gizmos, and the latest technology, including pre-collision warning, radar, cruise control, etc., you won't find them in the Altima at any price. You're going to have to go for something like a Chrysler 200 or a Ford Fusion. If, however, you're after a solid mid-size sedan with solid fuel economy numbers, then this Altima is a good choice. When it comes to the 3.5-liter model, however, I find the 3.5-liter model incredibly compelling. It delivers excellent fuel economy and excellent performance while still giving you that good ride and the good fuel economy and the decent handling numbers. I really find that 3.5-liter model incredibly compelling, and I would buy it over similarly configured Ford Fusions or the Chrysler 200 or the Honda Accord. Now, that similarly configured thing is where things get a little bit tricky, because you can, of course, option up your Fusion or your Chrysler 200 way beyond this Altima. Again, as I said, you can get those pre-collision features, radar cruise control, some luxury features that you just can't get in the Altima at any price. The Chrysler has that snazzy LCD ride in the dashboard, etc. And if you're looking at fully loaded cars, especially if you're looking at all-wheel drive, then I would push the Fusion or the Chrysler 200 over even the 3.5-liter V6 version of the Altima. However, if you're not looking at those fully loaded vehicles, then I would put this at the top of your shopping list. Thanks for taking the time to check out this video. Again, I'm Alex Dykes, and this has been the Nissan Altima. Go ahead and click that subscribe banner at the bottom of your screen so you can be updated on all of my latest videos. You can also find me over at facebook.com/alexandautos. You can email all of your questions to alex@alexandautos.com, and I'll see you next week.